We are at the Sustainable Energy for All Forum 2018 at Lisbon, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to everyone this panel. We are having a conversation on one of the very pertinent issues at this point in energy access, which is to reach, how do you reach the last 600 million people who are not likely to be reached by business as usual models. And so we are going to start with one business model, which is women-centric business model of expanding energy access to the last mile, to the most difficult locations. And I'm very proud to introduce to you Juliet, who is working in Uganda with a community-based organization. She runs an organization and works in remote areas of Uganda. So welcome, Juliet. And tell us about your business and about how you got into it.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Juliet Gibbs, like she said, and I will be talking about two programs. So first I have New Foundation, which is Ndiba Empowering Women. It's an organization that I started to enable women to have access to saving and credit options. And so we started with a group of 30 women in the village where I was born and raised, because we very well know that financial access remains a challenge in most of the rural areas in Africa, and financial institutions are not going there anytime soon. Yeah, so with a group of 30 women, apparently we started by having them do savings, and they would deposit money in one of the commercial banks. But then we realized the motivation was too low, because, I mean, they had no relationship with the commercial bank. Like, they are so distant to them and very intimidating. And so we introduced a model which is community managed microfinancing, and that's VSLAs. So the women would save money in the box and lend to each other at an interest rate. They share the dividends themselves at the end of the cycle. And like in just a few weeks, another group of 36 women came excited, and they wanted to also get a box. So it's like the news, you know, spread like a fire. And as I speak now, we are having over 140 groups of about 36 women. And yeah, they save money and lend to each other. So once this was set up, and we realized that the groups were actually performing well, you know, like at the end of the cycle, no woman is thinking of, you know, giving way to another to come in. Yeah, so then we realized this is a channel of other interventions. And one of the major challenges, as much as the women were having their money saved, was at the end of the cycle, we did a calculation, and there were other, like, access to renewable energy. So first, a lady will be giving a testimony that, you know, by participating in a savings group, I was able to borrow money to buy food for the famine season. But at the same time, you realize that the cost of biomass, firewood for cooking, is almost twice. And it's like, in the rural area, I'd never thought this is real. But like, if she bought maybe flour for a meal at about $1, then she needs biomass of like close to twice. And like, it's like you can't find food and you fail to cook it. So it's at that point that I began thinking of solutions, partnerships that I could work with to address this. And of course the other one is it was lighting, and we all know that women are at the forefront of that. We did a simple calculation of how much kerosene a woman purchases every day, and it came to, you know, like an equivalent of what she would borrow to start a business. And this is year in, year out. And so it just made sense that they needed access to, you know, solutions. But then the other challenge is, because they have really competing demands, then it was difficult for us to, you know, extend lanterns, solar lanterns to them for cash. So it's at that point that NVenture comes my way, and they were ready to extend a credit, soft loan of $2,000. And like, seems like small, but small monies can do great things. Yes, and it's not really small. So we started like an intervention of purchasing lanterns. Of course, NVenture also went an extra mile to link us with the different partners. So like the negotiations and working with those partners who are distributing like the certified products was much easier. Sometimes they delivered before we made the payment. Yeah, so like we started extending our credit, like for even products that cost about $10, they don't have the cash, they can't afford the cash. So, but then they are willing to make the payment maybe in a couple of weeks. And then maybe towards the end, the group can step in to give them a bit of credit. So, yeah, so we've moved on from that point.
Thank you, Juliet. I think it's an excellent example of what a homegrown initiative can do with a little bit of support from outside. And it's interesting that we're not really talking about huge amounts of money. We're just talking about a little bit of that startup capital and a lot of input, I think other kinds of input which may actually be more valuable than the finance itself. So let me ask you, Aneri, what is that other input that you provide that makes this all work, that makes it all come together?
Thank you. So I'm the founder of NVenture, and NVenture's mission is to really support rural entrepreneurs like Juliet to get access to the opportunities and to the financing to create the kinds of homegrown solutions in their communities. In Uganda, most of the energy companies that are there are pretty much founded by foreigners who are coming in, raising like millions of dollars of capital in creating peri-urban and urban kind of markets, and not really addressing the really rural places where Juliet's working. So with a small loan, we were able to unlock that opportunity for rural entrepreneurs who are denied that kind of financing from local banks. But what's also really great is it's not just the money, it's also the opportunities. So we pair them with business experts. So she had an investment banker from London actually come and support her on her business for 3 months. And then we also facilitated a Business 101 boot camp that Juliet attended and learned more about the business nuts and bolts to really grow from like a seed to eventually a small medium enterprise. And then we also developed FinTech because most of these entrepreneurs are in rural places. They don't have computers. Their sales agents are out in the field, so everything's done on pen and paper. So we really saw a huge need for better financial statements and record keeping, because it's not just the lack of money, it's like the lack of formalization that also prevents them from getting that money. So by providing all these different kinds of ecosystem service opportunities, that's how we're trying to channel.
Of course, one of the things is there have been lots of discussions, there have been lots of organizations that are in this space, and there's a lot to learn. There are some things we've not yet tried that I want to now get back. Maybe I may not interact with each of the institutions, but for those that I've known are working with women, like I've now just known she's somewhere close to Uganda. So I would like to know what they are doing different, and maybe I copy a leaf from that. But also one of the major limiting factors to stretch like the last mile. I was opportuned to have Aneri come to one of the mountain areas we went, and it's like the car couldn't go beyond the point. And so we just had to walk up the mountain. It had rained. So reaching the last mile is costly. But like that is where this is most needed. So like we need support to stretch and go that far, and not leaving anybody behind.
Absolutely, thank you. I like that you emphasize the learning from each other bit. I mean, SE for All can bring us together. They can do so much, but after that, we have to make that work and learn from each other. So that's a very good, I think, input for the accelerator. Aneri?
Yeah, I think it's just really important that, the reason it's called People-Centered Accelerator is because people are the ones who are working on this problem, not the technologies. You need to have a workforce that's educated and creating jobs in this space, because energy is not necessarily going to get people out of poverty. Jobs are going to get people out of poverty. So how do we go about creating those energy jobs? So Juliet's hiring dozens of women in her community who now have income to sell clean energy, and how do we replicate that so that local entrepreneurs are hiring people, are creating opportunities in the villages so people aren't fleeing the villages to go to the cities to find work, because clearly the need for energy is so strong that if there's enough people working on it, it can be done. So that's really where I think the strength of the People-Centered Accelerator is really how do we do that workforce development.
So actually, I'm going to throw the question back at you. How do we do that?
Well, I think it starts with as the accelerator. Well, I think it's also looking to find leaders. So one kind of missing piece of talking about energy and gender is that it's not just about empowering women, but it's about empowering women leaders. Julia is a leader in her community. If you see her, 1,000 people come to hear her speak. That's the kinds of people we need to be financing, providing opportunities to, and giving them the chance to, create hundreds of jobs in those areas. So the more women leaders that are local, that the People-Centered Accelerator can bring into the fold and empower, and the leadership doesn't have to be even energy focused. It can be just standard leadership curriculum that most of them are denied because they just don't have the opportunities to even get those kinds of trainings. In the States, they're super.
Okay, so just about also being people-centered, in my opinion, would be we are not going to bring to people solutions that we've sat in a laboratory and, come up with innovations, but where we've engaged the people that actually are going to use them.
Thank you. From lab to land, leadership, bucket of tools that will work, and most importantly, keeping women and people at the center of everything that we do. So I think these are the key messages that are coming out of this discussion.